Thank you, Mary.
Go ahead.
I'll start again. Made some updates to the MR to essentially clamp down on the definitions and the scope for what we discussed last in this working group. And try to add some milestones and specifics as to what I think the working group should be solving. It's definitely in line with what Craig had added and what we had discussed last. So I don't know if, do we want to sort of verbalize some of the stuff that was discussed in comments? I'm thinking about you, Josh. I was in the middle of answering your stuff.
Oh, yeah. So basically, I think you answered the first one, which was a question of the exclusion of customer instances. You know, I think in the original document that, yeah, I think so. And obviously, I think hopefully we can at least keep an eye towards operationalizing many of these things for our customers. But I think, so I think that makes sense in the first iteration. But something like a little bit, the question on my mind and in trying to find the best product management representative here would be, like, where do we think the biggest focus of the group will be? And do we think it's more about the operational processes of setting up sort of an operations center for multiple instances of these and responding efficiently to any incidents or alerts that arise? Or is it more about maybe building into the product more of automation and capability to handle some of the common day two operations, like dealing with Gitterly disk space, rebalancing Gitterly shards, and all the rest of the sort of stuff that potentially we do. I'm not sure what the breakdown of work is, to automate more of these things away and to really kind of reduce the number of these things. I realize it's probably both, is probably with the focus, but
I think it's a little bit of both. So some of the and I was in the middle of answering that comment. So some of those operations that you mentioned, like rebalancing, those really happen inside the instance, right? And there is work that is happening on that front for GitLab.com, which would essentially get replicated into those things. So I think this would, the output of this working group is a consumer of those facilities saying, I oversee all these different instances, and I see that instance over there, but I think the instances themselves have to take care of themselves, right? So this is more like our ability, I think, is more of our ability to say, we need to grow these instances efficiently. We have the references architectures, so we know what they look like at 1K, 2K, 5K. What I don't think we've worked out is how we seamlessly transition from one to the other, right? So I think the references architectures are useful in that a customer walks in and says, well, I have 2K, so I'm going to pick this. But once they grow to 5K, if they do, what do they do? And that's, I think, the problem we're trying to solve, because we are going to run into that as soon as we set up new instances in, say, China and EMEA. So those are what I call the step functions. Okay, we're going to reach 1,000 users. So at 850, we know we need to do step 1 and 2 so that this instance can now support 2,000. And at 1,500, we may decide, okay, it's time to get ready for 5,000. So how do we do that seamlessly? I think that's one of the aspects that this working group is solving. And then those are specific things, like from an overall point of view, I don't really care that some node in China is rebalancing itself. I think that's a concern for the instance in China more than the sort of overall orchestrator. And we're very used, and I think we have a lot of stuff that we've built that assumes GitLab.com is it. But what happens when you take these tools and then you start running them against a bunch of instances? And what new things do we need to develop so that we can actually support these instances? Because if you have one team that is now getting a flood of alerts, for instance, from various instances, do we need to now do routing because we have, I don't know. I think it's a higher level. And scalability is obviously working on, the work they're doing to scale GitLab.com is going to apply to the work that would scale these other instances. So,
yeah.
To answer the monitoring question, that's already pretty easy to set up. All of the routing, all of the monitoring system and Grafana and logging and Kibana and all that is already set up with multiple environments in mind. So
yeah,
should be relatively easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess I was just coming at the frame of, and this is all up for decision, but I think there's potentially an idea that we can use cloud native and an operator to perhaps automate many of these things, including and up to potentially some of the scaling between architecture types. Now, obviously, if you're going from a single node to multi-node database, that may or may not be trivial to do. It will with. Is that sort of like a focus, or is it more about like the infrastructure processes? And basically, I'm trying to figure out, should we have Larissa, in distribution and focus on the operator and the Helm charts, or maybe Andrew as the infrastructure PM, more focused around sort of the larger processes of the infrastructure group would be the best fit. It's going to be a mixture of both. I'm just trying to figure out, like, is it weighted one direction or the other? Is sort of what I'm trying to.
Josh, would that not be like a function of of timelines? So if we had really short timelines, then it might be sort of, let's get it in without the operator. But if the timelines were longer, and I'm not suggesting one or the other, but it's kind of a function of that. So we should discuss that first.
Yeah.
Right. I think some of these questions are the working group itself is supposed to answer them. Right. And figuring out, the business says, oh, we must be in China end of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the other aspect of that is, wow, I lost my train of thought right there. Somebody say something else while I rewind.
No, okay. I was close off the PM side, so I totally get a sense that it might evolve, and part of the working group's job is to identify and work through some of these issues. I'm just trying to find the right person to start out, and so if we have a sense or a gut feel, that's kind of what I'm trying to get towards.
I know what I was going to say. So these instances specifically that we're putting as examples, they're gonna drive us straight into regional compliance, right? EMEA, China, EMEA specifically with GDRP and all that. And so that's going to start dipping toes in water of which individuals can actually operate which instances, either to protect ourselves or to comply with laws. And that's why I said that federal was kind of it's a mixed bag, because federal would be a huge instance. But wading into the federal government is, it's almost worse than wading into EMEA. EMEA, you can actually reason, and it's just, the federal government is just such a huge consumer, and they have so many regulations, and EMEA does as well. But
this is not a compliance working group. I don't. Does anybody disagree with that?
Right. I don't think this group should work out those things. I'm just saying that it's gonna have an influence on, at least on the. Actually, you're right.
Cool. I made a few suggestions. No need to accept them now, but feel free to. We can have a conversation about them now if they look strange to you. So I think it should be explicit that the goal of a big installation looks like 1 million active users.
Okay.
Fully isolated means they don't have a common virtual operations center. Like different people. That's not the focus of this. I agree with the focus on instances owned and operated by GitLab. I think that fits well. I think I added that the automation we make should be applicable to self-managed installations in the future. Like, this is all about automation.
Right.
If there's nothing super controversial, then take your time to review them.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for saying that limit on 1 million. I didn't really know where to put the.
I'm trying to write them so that, like, the biggest focus of this working group, I think, should be like making sure that we can run GitLab.com on our Helm charts, because that's like the first unlock to automating more. So whatever the charter for this group is doesn't point to like eliminating NFS and getting GitLab.com on the Helm charts, then we're doing it wrong. So I'm not sure exactly, not sure about the inputs, but I have a suggestion about the output.
You want me to be explicit on that? Like, I think
No,
it makes sense, but
I think as long as we're aligned there, and there's going to be something else, and maybe we could work around NFS, that would be great, and still move GitLab.com along and not wait for that. I'm a bit puzzled that we have to wait. But like, those are the issues we should focus on.
But I understand that is a prerequisite, right? Like NAT is a focus. It's a prerequisite for anything we do. We need to be able to do Helm charts for GitLab.com without shared storage, right? So that's a prerequisite.
But it's like it's the thing on the critical path, and that's the first kind of door to open, and then we can open other doors after that.
okay.
One thing that shaked my Helm chart fundamentalism was Ben that said Prometheus skills without Helm charts. Is it interesting to just have Ben discuss that for a couple of minutes?
Sure.
Ben, you want to give
so,
some context there?
Yeah, so Helm is just a chef for Kubernetes. It's just a way to control the configuration of an installation. And for something as complicated as GitLab or Prometheus, where Prometheus is not just one component, it's a bunch of different components, you can either build a series of Helm charts that control that configuration, and you have Helm file to do templating, which is what we're doing right now, or you can use a custom resource definition, CRD, and then you build an operator, which is some kind of binary that is kind of the orchestrator of the orchestration. And so, for example, the people working on Postgres, the Ongress people, they've been working on a Postgres operator that will operate a whole Postgres cluster in a Kubernetes cluster. And because Postgres requires a lot of like locking, and you want to make sure that you do the right failover things and stuff that's just not like trivial. You've got a bunch of Rails processes and you don't care how they come and go. You have like some amount of state that needs to be moved around, and sidekick jobs that need to be sidekick job workers that need to be started and stopped, and databases and Redis and all that. So my proposal a long time ago was that Helm was a good start to get GitLab into a Kubernetes cluster, but we would eventually need an operator to operate the whole orchestration of running a GitLab and applying the updates in the right way and dealing with canaries and stuff like that. Whereas Helm is good for just deploying stuff, it doesn't do the complication that we need to actually run GitLab.com or any instance that is as big as GitLab.com.
That makes sense to me. I've read about this operator pattern and people making that. I always assumed that you'd still have Helm, but thought the operator would act on top of that. But it's one or the other?
I can actually bring some light into that, because as Ben said, we're building such an operator. And so basically the key concept for, in my opinion, for the operator is what it's called the reconciliation cycle. So basically with Helm, you create automation, and this automation deploys an infrastructure. But later on, this infrastructure may change, either because you want to explicitly change it, I want to add an extra node, or because a node dies. And so this reconciliation cycle, which runs as the operator, is a software that continuously watches the expected state against the actual state. And if it finds any difference, it applies whatever change. Create a new node that has died, or deploy a new instance that you have requested. And this cannot be done on Helm. So Helm solves kind of the first part. You'll deploy this automation and then you're done. But if anything happens or you want to change that, you may run into difficulties. So an operator via this reconciliation cycle allows you not only to keep the state in the desired state, but also to apply these day two operations that you're referring to as part of this working group. For example, we're targeting right now how to perform a controlled restart of a Postgres cluster by draining first the traffic. All this can be fully automated. Or how to perform a PG repack, which is something that that all makes a ton of sense.
Do you mean do you mean to imply that you can have Helm charts and then the operator modifies them so you can use both?
It's
Actually,
more the other
Helm-
way around. So
Yeah.
for example, in our production environment, we actually use the Prometheus operator Helm chart to configure the operator, and the operator does the actual work. So it's Helm, then operator, then Kubernetes. You don't need to do that. You could actually control the operator directly, but Helm is just one config language for Kubernetes, and it's not the only config language. There are several other competing projects.
Alvaro?
Yeah, so the operator may actually need some configuration itself, may have variables like options. Speaking in our case, you may want to deploy on a given namespace, or you want to deploy the UI or not, and several other knobs that you may tune. So you can use Helm for those. So Helm is actually used to deploy the operator, and then the operator takes control of it. Actually, the whole pattern is also, Ben mentioned, the CRDs, the custom resource definition, which is basically high-level objects that you create that represents abstract concepts. In our case, a Postgres cluster, right? And you don't need to understand that it uses Patroni underneath, that it uses connection pooling, or how they're configured together using Unix domain sockets. You say, hey, I want a Postgres cluster with 3 instances, with this Postgres version, and maybe this custom configuration. And that's a CRD, which is a YAML file, basically. It could be also JSON, that's not relevant. They just submit it to Kubernetes. Kubernetes will talk to the operator. The operator will create the actual stuff behind the scenes. So Helm charts are the bootstrapping process. Yes, they just install the operator into Kubernetes, then the operator takes care of pretty much everything else.
Okay, so is the role of this working group to make an operator for Git, and then the first place to test to dog food it would be GitLab.com in order to kind of reduce the amount of manual work we do there.
But the operator concept is hard to implement on an existing installation. It's not trivial on a specifically setup like GitLab.com, like charts that we are setting up for GitLab.com. That takes a lot more effort. For greenfield investments, that would make a lot of sense to approach it right now. But if we want to go down this route for GitLab.com, that adds additional level of complexity that we need to think about, especially with the fact that we are shipping Helm charts to our customers, meaning we need to also support both ways, right? Like the manual Helm chart installation and then whatever takes over that's on top.
I can maybe provide a little bit of color on where we're at on the operator. So we worked on one a while ago and we ran into problems with the Helm and the operator stepping on each other because Helm doesn't like it when you change things out underneath it. I linked in the 0.5 a couple, there's additional items as well. I just found one of the first operator discussion. There's other parts of that as well. I just couldn't find them quickly. And then B, there's a partnership going on with Red Hat right now where we're working on an OpenShift operator in partnership with Red Hat. And they got some distance on their own before we became aware and got involved. And we're now looking to try to find a way to build an operator that works in OpenShift, leveraging Red Hat's expertise. But hopefully it's a path forward for our customers to continue to basically be on the same path and not have a third installation type, operator, Helm charts, and Omnibus, as well as hopefully leveraging a lot of the work that has gone into the Helm charts as far as templating and not having to have a whole set of YAML templates that the operator has to manage and configure. So we are doing some thinking on this right now. We're having, I believe, weekly meetings with Red Hat. And so there's some discussion here and some progress. That's the current state of the operator, and potentially the Helm SDK for the operator might be a interesting way to have the operator act as a control plane, but execute some operations through the Helm chart. And then I think hopefully over time we can find a way to have the operator consume more and more of the Helm chart and getting away from Helm. But that's a little bit of what I think.
That's the more likely thing. We first make the Helm charts great, make sure we use them on GitLab.com, and then we'll see what the patterns are that are popular. We'll be better informed. We'll know more, and then we can we can go from there. So it's still all in on Helm charts, right?
Yeah, the plan still is for all of our customers to use Helm charts and then try to chart a path to move on to an operator, that we don't create a third installation path for all of our customers.
Yeah, but first
Because
step
this
is getting the
Yep.
Helm chart on .com. Great.
Yeah.
when we were playing with the operator, when we were trying to implement the operator concept inside of the charts to begin with, we ran exactly into like a huge number of edge cases, and that created quite a lot of challenges for us. So we either could focus on getting the Helm charts to be usable, or work on the operator and trying to get Helm charts to be usable at the same time, which didn't really work.
Yeah,
So
let's do this smaller thing. Yeah, great.
I'm going to do a time check. We have 2 more minutes to go. So I think the next thing for us to do is to put some of these ideas in writing, to be specific and make sure that we're figuring out which things we're answering. I'll take care of doing that. We also need to figure out so I wanted to raise the point of, Sid, are you going to be attending this one regularly? Because we have two executives
not sure.
here. Okay.
It's okay to. I think your MR's very good, so it sets a good path. I want to check a few things, but I'll attend only.
I was just
only
asking
one week.
because since we have 2 executives on the call, but we only need 1 executive's concert, just trying to be efficient. So
Who's the
I'll
other
take care of Christopher.
Hey, Christopher.
So I'll take care of coalescing these ideas into the MR so we can figure out what next steps are and then continue to plow through this. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks.